Mason Foster and his agent, they don't really like the Redskins after Mason
No.
Foster was released yesterday, right before training camp begins. I mean, you can goof on him somewhat, but for slowing down a bit over the years. But he had 131 tackles for the Skins last season. He had 123 back in 2016. Talk about how that impacted and
Timing of it.
yeah, the timing and what are his
That's my
prospects for,
beef.
for latching on with another team at this point.
Yeah, I think his prospects of at least getting another training camp are great. You have 131 tackles, and you're someone who's seen as a really smart football player. You've got a chance, and especially if word gets around that he's down 30 pounds, which he was, and that was kind of why I was a little confused. Like, there's gripes to pick with Mason. I like Mason a lot. I think he's a smart guy. I've learned a lot of football from him over the years. Just talking to him, and the fact that he runs this defense, you get a nice, clear picture of what's going on from him when he talks to the media. And so the gripes you could pick with him, though, is that he can't run anymore, that he's just not doesn't have the speed to play middle linebacker. And when he's dropped 30 pounds, you go, well, maybe he'll get some of that back, and let's see what he can do. And not that you're going, yes, Mason Foster is our starting linebacker. He's probably more of a backup caliber player. But I do think that with that dropped weight and his knowledge of the defense, he would have been in prime position to be the starter based off their inside linebacker depth. And I haven't gotten, Blake Barrett's his agent, he tweeted out last night, as you guys referenced, that they haven't gotten a clear answer on what the heck happened here, and neither have I, frankly. Like, I get the playing stuff, but for a couple of reasons, this doesn't make a lot of sense from a timing standpoint, including the fact that you've now wasted the entire spring giving him starters reps. He was the one that was in with Sean Dion Hamilton and the rest of the ones. And so whether it's Sean Dion not getting the reps at Mike, calling the defense and executing those responsibilities, and then whoever would have been next to him. I mean, Reuben Foster went down on the third snap of OTAs. He hasn't been in the picture for basically the entire spring. And to then have other players that aren't getting the reps, especially when they're young players, Sean Dion, who is still really young and relatively inexperienced, Josh Harvey Clemens, who needs all the reps he can get always as he still finishes that conversion from safety and is trying to become a full-time NFL linebacker. And then obviously Cole Holcomb is a rookie. To give those reps to Mason is poor job by the Redskins if they were going to cut him. Not to mention, it's not doing right by a veteran who was a captain of your team just last year. Let him latch on somewhere else sooner. So I don't see who this benefits at all, with the exception of, in life, where's the thing you always look? Follow the money. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what this is about. I wonder if they felt like they needed more space for Sheriff and maybe even Trent, and that's why cutting him, saving $4 million is why this happens now. Maybe they thought they weren't going to need the money. I've always kind of said there was no reason to cut him until you needed the money. And so the money is the only explanation that makes sense to me. But at the same time, if you knew you were going to need this money, which they have for a long time, then why not do this in the spring? The timing of it makes zero sense for anybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, I think that's exactly why they're doing it. And maybe they just didn't realize how serious it was with Trent. I know he's been threatening to hold out for a while, but now it gets real because camp's starting and he's not there, and he's threatening not to be there. And they needed the extra cap room, and so, yeah, it's the timing makes you scratch your head, but the reason doesn't.
Yeah, to a point, but I mean, if that's it, like, to use a poker analogy, that'll probably stink, especially for you guys because you play and I don't. But it's like, this is going to be a giant game of chicken. The Redskins, in some level, are bluffing with Trent, and so is Trent with them, who's going to blink first. And this will be our number one story on our 10 stories countdown, obviously, that wraps up today on thefandc.com. But, like, if you're bluffing and you're trying to not show your hand and you fist pump when a 2 comes out, that's probably a good sign that your hand sucks. And so if you're the Redskins and you're looking at this Trent situation and going, well, we're not going to give you what you want, Trent, and then all of a sudden you cut a guy to create $4 million more of space, it's like, okay, you're going to pay up eventually. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. And you could have waited, hey, if he's not here for the first 2 weeks of camp, and then maybe you cut Mason then into camp knowing that he's not going to make your roster. But the timing to me is bizarre. I can justify, even though he was on pace, in my opinion, to start, which is another wild thing. There are other players that aren't that far behind, and I think can even close the gap with the training camp at this new lower weight at this on your team, and B, the timing, that is what I just can't make sense of.
All right, any sense, I know it's all sort of shrouded in mystery, the whole Trent Williams, like the surgery, and we don't really know exactly what happened there with the scalp. Is there any sense that he actually could be held out medically? I know that people have kind of thrown that out there. Does anybody think that's a viable possibility, that medically he won't even be cleared for quite a while?
I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
My impression has been that he is going to be ready to go. Obviously, in the off season he's used to. He's
Right.
been recovering, and when you got a giant wrap on your head for parts of the off season, you can't work out on a regular schedule. So he is probably going to have to be eased back in. You don't want to give him too much too soon and get him hurt. But I have not been given any inclination from any side, Redskins or people that know Trent, that he would not be ready to start because of the head thing. No.
Where do we know where Trent is right now?
My guess is Houston, in his hometown. I tried to check in with the people last night to see if he reported, and they were under the impression that he wasn't. Obviously, multiple things came out yesterday that said he wasn't. I was told he wasn't. So I don't expect him to, but as far as I know, he's still in Houston.
So where does John Bostic fit into this whole story? Who they signed I think they signed him in May, maybe late May. He bounced around the league a little bit. He was with the Bears and a few other teams, the Patriots. But where does he fit into this situation?
My guess is that tomorrow when they line up and the first group of ones is on the field, he's next to Sean Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
They must really like what they saw. I mean, I know they did. And the other aspect of this, by the way, is they were not really thrilled with how Mason Foster played on special teams last year, in part because the running stuff, if you can't move and get up to full speed and cover the lane you need to, that's obviously problematic on special teams. And I think at this point in their careers, Bostic is just a faster player. And so they like that. They like that ability to be on teams as well. And so we'll see. But, yeah, I think that right now, Sean Hamilton's your starting Mike linebacker, Bostic's your starting Mo at the other inside linebacker spot. And we'll see whether it's Holcomb or Josh Harvey Clemens can overtake one of those guys. But, it's ironic because a couple of years ago in Chicago, Mason actually came in and then wound up beating out Bostic for a spot with the Bears. And here a couple of years later, aged years later for both of them, Mason having played a lot more football in between, Bostic seems to have gotten the upper hand with the Redskins, even though Mason was the incumbent.